Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Sunday, Volume 12. We're back with Doctor Strange. Apologies again for the long wait, but from now on, every 2 weeks, we'll get it done again. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. We'll hop over the basic stats pretty quickly because it will be always the same kinda. Move to basic as usual. Um, you are double ranged, which is insanely strong because you have a lot of ball control, you have two bodies to split up damage. You can most often control the engagement, especially against melee fighters, just because you can maneuver, attack them from range, and they still have to maneuver and attack you. So you can captivate it with advantage or disadvantage, however you want. 14 health on Doctor Strange himself is pretty low, but you have your 6 health sidekick with Wong, which means you have a total health pool of 20, which is pretty decent, especially for double range. Um, and as if that wasn't enough, you also have an insane amount of healing in the deck. Um, so that is just your total health pool is way higher. But of course you have self damage with your ability, which we'll come to next. Um, just last thing to say, Strange is one of the few characters that actually has only 11 unique cards, which makes your deck just so insanely consistent. Um, because instead of the 12 ones, you just have 11 different cards, so you're pretty likely to see each of them pretty like early consistently. Um, yeah, I hope you get what I mean. Oh damn, I'm out of this. Um, the character ability, it says Dark Pact. After each combat, if Doctor Strange played a card, you may deal 1 damage to him. If you do, put that card on the bottom of your deck and draw 1 card. Okay, so um, right from the start, having to decide this after every single combat leaves you with an insane amount of options. You have so many decision points throughout the game. Um, when to use this ability and when not to, that it could be pretty impactful. I'm just saying could because it's not, usually at least. Um, but let's see, what does this actually mean? So you are a 14 health hero. So after each combat, if you play a card, which means you defended or attacked with Strange, it has to be with Strange, not Wong. Wong can't use this. Um, you can deal yourself 1 damage. So 14 health, taking 1 damage after each combat. Sounds bad, but I mean you have a lot of healing. That's because they of course took this ability into account. Um, so you can use this usually like 8 or 9 times per game. Um, and then if you do, you put the card used in the combat on the bottom of your deck. So you're adding cards to your deck. Of course, you also draw one, so your total deck count doesn't change, but you still get to use the card that you used in the combat again. For example, if you have a 3 copy card, you can take 1 damage to make that a 4 copy card, basically. Um, and in many cases, getting to recur a card for just 1 health is an insane amount of value. Um, for example, you have Feints in the deck, which we'll get to later. If you're playing against Sinbad and well, you're recurring a feint, usually his voyages later are 5, 6, 7 value attacks. You don't take damage if you feint those. So taking 1 to get a card back that maybe blanks an opponent's attack can be just insanely strong. Um, However, you put it on the bottom of your deck, so it should mean that you don't see the card in the near future again, except like if you have still like another copy on top. Um, but the card that you put on bottom should stay at bottom, right? No, it doesn't. You have many effects that let you shuffle your deck, which can help with that. Um, but at least you don't get it instantly back, which might be a like moment of opportunity for your opponent. Maybe if you played your second feint, and you put it on bottom again, at least they still know that your feints are gone because yes, you only have two of them. Um, might be an issue in some cases, but still you don't really care. Um, what you recur with the ability will depend on the matchup and the game state as always. Um, and also how often you want to recur certain cards. Of course, against Sinbad, Feint is a great card, but maybe you don't want to recur it too often because there's still the possibility of it going into commanding, in which case you take three, and that just feels really bad. Um, but yeah, I'll have it a bit different this time, that I don't just show you a recursion tier list because I think it differs so much with Strange. Um, I'll just talk about each card and then show you a recursion factor, is what I call it, on the bottom, and talk about it like in a brief way. Um, how often you usually want to recur that card, what to think about it in different matchups, when to recur it, and yeah. So let's get to the actual cards. The first one is a 4-value attack with a booster value of 1. You have 3 copies. It's a Doctor Strange oldie, and it's the Winds of Watomb. It says, after combat, your opponent places Doctor Strange in an empty start, not in an empty, in a starting space, but since he plays, it has to be empty. Um, place the opposing fighter in another starting space. All players shuffle their decks. Okay, so 4-value attacks are pretty good. Like the average block value is 3, so it will usually deal at least 1 damage, which is pretty nice. However, usually the effect is what you play this card for. Because this can be used to kite with advantage, even if your opponent is in a space where they force you into adjacency, so they can double attack you, you can just play this. Like they have to place you in a starting space. They'll probably pick the one like most near to them, but then you can place them in a starting space, creating a huge amount of distance between you and them because usually the starting spaces are like a bit further from each other. Um, which can mean that your opponent might overdraw. For example, if they ended their turn with 7 cards, you maneuvered, attacked them, they defended, go down to 6. You warp around the board with the starting spaces. They're still at 6 cards, they can't reach you, so they double maneuver, overdraw to 8, and discard 1. There are some pretty, pretty bad uses for this card. In that case, where it's insanely unfun, but of course your opponent can play around it because um, you have to place yourself in starting spaces, meaning if there are some starting spaces already occupied, but maybe by sidekicks, one-house sidekicks, whatever, you can't place yourself there. So um, one can block a starting space, for example. Your opponent's sidekick could block one, and then there are only 2 options to place, which might give your opponent a bit more control, but again, the starting spaces tend to be like on the edges of the map, so even so, might not be great. Also, one thing to note, your opponent will always place Strange first, so maybe if they have a sidekick next to a starting space, they will have the option to warp you there first, so you then get to choose. Um, but at least since they place Strange first, you then can place them wherever you want, so you already have the knowledge, so it's kind of like a double-edged sword where they get the first choice, so maybe if there is an empty starting space where they want you to go, they can place you there, but at least then you also have already the knowledge where you are at, and then can place them. So yeah, pretty good effect overall. Um, and then all players shuffle their decks. Like I said, the shuffling um, is usually in most decks that would be like an effect that does nothing. But in your case, it can be important because you maybe already put like 2 or 3 cards on the bottom of your deck with your ability. Um, so in that case, that usually leads to you seeing the cards earlier because, well, if they are already on bottom, if you shuffle again, it can't be worse than bottom. So they the possibility of them being like higher in the deck um is pretty high. Higher is pretty high. That's funny. Um, Other than that, the shuffling of your opponent's deck usually doesn't do much, but it can be important if any cards were put on the bottom of their deck, maybe by their own card effects, maybe by a scheme token from the map, the Daily Bugle from Sanctum Sanctorum might do something there, or from your own cards, or in a 2v2 from your teammates or whatever. You have one card that puts cards on the bottom of their deck, but it's a bit conditional. Just keep that in mind. If they have certain cards that got put on the bottom of their deck that you don't want to see in the near future, maybe don't play this. About recurring this, I've put this as a recursion factor 2 out of 5 because it's a 4 value attack, it's okay, but usually you don't want to use it, except if like all of them were like used in the first few turns and you want the shuffling again, because that's usually the only thing why you would recur this, because there are just other options and it's usually not worth the 1 health. But there are certainly some cases where you like this, so I put it as a 2 out of 5, not too often, but yeah. Next up, however, oh boy, the Rings of Ragador. It's another 4 value attack. This time it's an any, so one can use it as well, with a boost value of 1. And it says after combat, if you won the combat, your fighter and each friendly fighter adjacent to them recover health equal to the damage dealt. And you have 3 copies of this. Like before, 4 value attacks are pretty good. Average block value is 3, so usually deal 1 damage. Um, this is basically a disarming shot from Robin's deck that heals you instead of drawing, which is insanely broken. Like, holy, I don't know how they came up with this card. Um, if this is undefended in some way, it works basically like an 8 health swing. So you heal 4 because you dealt 4 damage, and of course you dealt 4 damage, so the opponent takes 4. So that's a difference of 8, which is like insane. And you're a ranged character. Um, and it gets even better than that because, as always, this is great to use on 1 health sidekick, since even though they only have 1 health, if they don't defend, 4 damage is still dealt. So you would still heal the 4, which is like it's so it's so stupid. Um, it gives you potential of infinite healing in the deck. One can use this as well, so might be some niche cases where you do that, although then you can't recur it. And the most stupid thing about this, even if Wong uses it, if Strange is adjacent, Strange heals as well, because each friendly fighter adjacent heals. This card is so stupid. You recur it every single time, basically, because, like I said, you almost always deal at least 1 damage with it. And in that case, you heal once, so you get this card for free again, if you recur with ability, just because you healed the one. But yeah, there will be cases in the game later where you just maybe heal 2 because your opponent only has a certain amount of 3 value blocks. Um, or they might not have blocks, they might not have any blocks. At the end of the game, if you recur like a certain amount of cards, because you have so many additional cards, you're attacking more often, so your opponent will probably be out of defense if they don't kill you before, which is pretty hard, as we'll see. Um, And then, yeah, you just play this every time undefended. Here, you take 4, I heal 4, so you probably end the game with full health again. This card is so stupid. Yeah, recurred basically every time. Only if you, like, would get to a lethal threshold, maybe don't do it. Maybe if you're at 3 health after the healing and then you want to recur this, you would be at 2 and then maybe Jackalope Horns or any other scheme that deals 2 would kill you. Maybe in that case, don't recur it. Other than that, yeah, it's insanely broken. This card is stupid. Um, Next, we have the Bolts of Delphac, which is a 2 value attack. Any with a boost rate of 3, you have 4 copies. And it says during combat, you may blind boost this card. And after combat, if you won the combat, gain 1 action. 2-value attacks you usually only play for their effect. And in this case, it's again kind of like a double-edged sword because you don't like blind boosting as strange. Reason for that, the blind boosted cards cannot be recurred with your abilities. So if you blind boost with this, the card you hit is gone, which can be good, which can be bad. Optimally, you hit another copy of this, making it to a 5, which is really, really strong because a 5 usually will win combat and then you gain an action. But in worst case, maybe you hit something like a rings, which is a 1 boost. And then the rings is gone. You have a 3, which usually won't do anything. So it's really, really risky. However, being able just to gain the action if you win can lead to some devastating combo turns out of nowhere. If your opponent doesn't have defense once, you play maybe 2 of these, you can maybe deal them like 8 damage with 2 of them because your average boost value is kinda around 2. And then you still have 2 actions, which is dumb. So your opponent will always have to have at least like 2 or 3 good defenses um, just to play against this, which already like forces a good amount of their playstyle. Um, and yeah, like I said, you have a total of 6 3-value boosts. You have 4 of these and 2 of your schemes, meaning if you play one of these, you only have 5 of them left. 5 3 boosts in the deck, 14 2 boosts, and 10 1 boosts. So, like, average boost value that you hit would be a 2, but there are 10 cases where you hit a 1, so I don't think it's worth blind boosting this, usually. Just because, yeah, you could hit one of your good 1 boost cards, um, and then you feel pretty sad. Of course, if your opponent only played a 2-value defense, it might be worth because then you can guarantee to win the combat because you will hit at least a 1-value boost. Um, but I think usually if your opponent blocks with a 3 or higher, you don't blind boost this. Strange doesn't like want to kill the opponent fast. He just outvalues them with getting cards back. He has an insane amount of passes, and well, he just stays alive, and the opponent has no cards, and then he wins. That's usually his playstyle. So, um, not really worth. But there are some certain cases where you recur this, because where you blind boost this, um, just to get the actions and combo. About recurring, I put it as a 3 out of 5 for 2 different reasons. One, just like with rings, your opponent is pretty likely to have no defenses at the end of the game, so this can lead to a combo turn, although you probably don't need it, because well, they have no cards, so they're going to fatigue. Um, and this is a 3-value boost, which might be important in some matchups where maybe they already killed Wong, and then there is like a move 5 between you and them, even though you're ranged. There are some maps, maybe McMinnville, where that can happen. And you have another card that relies a bit on your boost value, but in case of healing, so that could be important. Um, or if you just like early in the game want another one of these, just have the possibility of hitting itself on the blind boost if you go for it. Um, so it's like not a card that they recur every time, but I could see 1 or 2 recurs per game with this, depending on like what the matchup is, what you expect to do, what your game plan is. And yeah. Next up, we have the Seven Sons of Cinnabis. I love strangest card names. Like the cards are stupid, but the names are really cool. It's a Doctor Strange only 3-value versatile with a boost value of 2. You have 3 copies, and it already says if the value of this card is above 7, ignore its value. But now you ask, how should this card be above 7? It's a 3-value versatile. Well, during combat, you may blind boost this card up to 2 times. Okay, 3-value versatiles already on their own are pretty good. They're average block value, which is good to see. Um, Having an effect just increases that. And in this case, being able to blind boost this card up to 2 times can lead to an insanely high defense value. Of course, it's being 7 because higher it will be ignored. Um, But just like with bolts, the cards you blind boosted with are gone. You can't recur them. It's not possible. Except if you're playing like on Hell's Kitchen and get the payphone, and you can get one of them back to hand. Yay, woohoo. Um, but usually it's not great for you. Um, Same goes for if the value of this card is above 7, you ignore. So just blind boosting twice is really, really risky. Of course, your average boost value is around 2, a bit lower. But depending on what you already used, it might get higher than that. And if you just hit a 3 boost and a 2 boost, well, you get an 8, and then you use 3 of your cards, 2 of which you can't recur anymore, for a 0 value defense that does nothing, which just feels insanely bad. So I think I've never blind boosted this card twice, except like if I would die otherwise. So if you know a 6 value defense somehow doesn't is not enough, maybe if Tomoe comes and hits you with her 7, and you're in 1 health, yeah, you have to blind boost twice, of course, but um, still just the possibility of losing 3 of your cards for nothing is, it hurts. Um, Typically, you blind boost not at all or just once. And just for clarification, you have to decide how often you want to blind boost before actually doing it. So you can't just blind boost once, see a 1 boost, and then say, okay, I'll blind boost again. No, you have to say it right away, how often, and then do it, and yeah. However, this is basically your highest value defense, so I put it as a 4 out of 5 just because this card is really versatile. Um, you can always decide on how often you want to blind boost. It can be a high value defense, um, and it's one of the better cards to recur because it's also versatile, so it could also be a pretty good attack. Um, so yeah, usually don't blind boost or once maybe, depending on what the opponent attacked with. Um, and yeah, pretty good card to recur. Um, Crazy effect, but yeah. Next up, we have the Cloak of Levitation, which is a stupid card. Uh, sorry. It is a 2 value versatile for Doctor Strange with a boost value of 1. It has 2 copies, and it says during combat, if Doctor Strange is adjacent to the opposing fighter, ignore the value of your opponent's card. Well, uh, 2 value cards are usually only play for the effect. Well, yeah, fuck it. The effect is it's an ignore value, and you can recur this. There are like half of the roster of the official characters is melee, or even more of them have at least one melee character in them, be it their sidekicks or their hero. Um, and this card just completely shuts down any type of melee fighters, because hey, Bigfoot comes in, smacks you with a log. Oh, the log is a 0 value because you ignore because he has to be adjacent for attacking. Oops. It's so stupid. Um, yeah, against melee fighters, this card single-handedly wins you the game. It means basically you take no damage. And this is one of the cases where, as I said with the ability, just as Feint with Sinbad, this against any melee character, well, you recur this basically every single time against melee just because, hey, you take 1 damage to not take damage in the next combat, which is a really, really good trait. Um, Even against range fighters, you will find ways in a match to force this onto them. Um, because there are cases where you force them into adjacency, maybe because you're in the pocket, or they would have to boost like with around to not be adjacent, which they might not be able to afford. And then you can blank their value again. So against range fighters, usually not recur that often, but hey, there are cases. There are cases. Um, However, this card has 2 drawbacks. One is that it can be feinted, so any character with maybe a +1 or a +2 on attack might just play an offensive feint. Um, what comes to mind is maybe She-Hulk with her 4 value offensive feint that will deal 2 damage over this. Big Alice, Khonshu, Angry Achilles. Um, those might be the ones where you should be a bit hesitant to play this, but again, it would only be 2 damage, and those characters usually smack you for 6s. Um, so yeah, it would also usually be 2 damage. So I don't think there's as much as of a drawback to play this instead of maybe Lady Justice on She-Hulk, which is a 0 printed, which if ignored, uh, fainted, I mean, would deal 4. So yeah, this being a 2 printed is actually pretty important in that case. But yeah, you basically recur this every single time because it's just fucking stupid. Um, and yeah, I want to go to the next card because I hate this card. We have Master of Camouflage, which is another 2 value versatile. This time it's in any, with a 2 boost, 3 copies. It says during combat, if Doctor Strange and Wong are adjacent, this card's value is 4 instead. So 2 value versatiles, just as always, get played for the effect. I feel like kind of like I'm repeating myself on these cards because Strange's cards values are basically all the same. Um, this is the only card in the deck that requires Wong to be alive, to actually have like a use for the effect. And the effect is like it's okay. 4 value block is like technically the highest you have if you don't want to blind boost with 7 suns. So in that case, it's pretty good. But I mean, Wong only has, I think, what was it, 8 blocks in the deck, something like that. So he will die pretty fast. And even if you're not adjacent, this is just a 2, which is like not good at all. 2 value blocks without effect are actually insanely bad. So yeah, in early game where you want to clump up and just keep them adjacent, it's pretty nice. I mean, you want to be adjacent anyways, just to maybe also heal Wong with rings. But once Wong is dead, this is basically a dead card. And there is actually an argument to be made just to let Wong die turn 2 or something like that, because if the opponent attacks Wong a bunch of times and you spend your cards on him to defend him, well, the cards you spend on him you can't recur because it's not Strange being in the combat. Um, so yeah, this card, if you're lucky, might get used 2 times per game, but you definitely don't recur this except like if you need the draw. If your opponent is like able to double attack you and you don't have any more defense, you maybe recur this just to get the draw from your ability to maybe draw into another defense, but that's like the only case I see where you recur this card, because otherwise, yeah, it's just a blank 2 usually after you recur it. Um, yeah. Next up, already mentioned it, it's Feint. It's your usual Feint, 2 very versatile. Any with a 1 boost, you have 2 copies only. Only. Which means immediately cancel all your effects on your opponent's card. We love to see Fainted in infinite recursion deck, like, ooh, Sinbad loves this, having infinite feints. Um, as always, Feint is one of the cards where I can't be too mad about it because it's very dependent on the matchup and the situation. Um, of course, it can shut down a whole character if used correctly. Maybe Sinbad with his voyages, Little Red with all of her effects, or like Tomoe if she doesn't swing the 7. Feint can be really powerful and versatile. Um, but there are also some matchups, maybe Luke Cage or Bigfoot, where Feint is basically just a blank 2 value defense that does nothing. Um, so yeah, as always, Feint is one of the cards where you might want to recur it just to attack with it, maybe first action to guarantee a double attack. Um, but it doesn't really fit Strange's playstyle because what he does is usually like attack and then maneuver away, so the opponent has to approach again, forcing them into adjacency. You play Cloak, don't take damage, you attack them, maneuver away again, and yeah, repeat. So it is a very versatile card, and I'll put it as a 3 out of 5 with a recursion factor, um, because it is still pretty useful. But it's like, depending on the matchup, how often you want it. Maybe you recur it once just to have like your 3 copies of Feint, your usual ones. But I don't think more often than that is worth it, usually. Then we have Steadfast Disciple, which is the only Wong specific card in the deck. It is a 2 value versatile With the booster, you have 3 copies. It says after combat, if Wong is adjacent to the opposing fighter, deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter and draw 1 card. So, yeah, dealing damage to adjacent fighters can be nice. I mean, it's auto damage. You don't really complain about it. Any point of damage is a point of damage. It could be nice to kill off 1 health sidekicks. However, you'd rather throw a rings at them just to heal maybe for 4, and they still die. The draw is okay to keep up hand size, because this is actually the only draw you have on an actual combat card. You have still, of course, you still have your ability, which you can use basically every combat, giving you the chance to get a draw 1 onto any of your cards, but just from your cards themselves, if you don't want to use your ability the whole game for some reason, this is your only actual draw on a combat card, um, which might be good in some cases, but overall this card is just pretty mediocre and not really a reason to keep Wong alive. Also, the one thing that makes this even worse, Wong has to be adjacent to deal the 1 damage, so and to draw 1 card, by the way. So yeah, if he gets attacked from ranged, this card is a blank 2. If he gets defeated over the 2, it's a blank 2 because after combat he's already not alive so anymore, so he is not adjacent to the opponent. Yeah, pretty mediocre card. And yeah, you usually just let 1 die. If you get this, sure, use it, but other than that, not great. And of course, no recursion factor because hey, you can't recur it. It's a 1 card. And then, yeah, last combat card we'll get into. It's again pretty stupid. It's the Mists of Munipur. It is a 2 value block card for Strange. It has a 2 boost value and you have 3 copies, and it says immediately. Alright, homies. Let's take a small water, a sip here. Okay. Discard your opponent's card. They reveal cards from their deck until they reveal an attack or versatile card they can play. They play that card and randomly put the rest of the revealed cards on the bottom of their deck. Holy, that's a long effect. Um, okay, so 2 value blocks are a bit on the worse side. 3 is average, but yeah, you still have the effect, and the effect is stupid as hell. I mean, immediately discarding your opponent's card is already great and can win you games. Dracula attacks you with a beast form, you play this, bam, the beast form is gone. um, However, this card can backfire insanely hard, since if your opponent maybe attack you with a regroup, you discard the regroup, and then you reveal cards from their deck, so you don't have control over it, they don't have control over it. It's pure luck. It's just random. So you reveal cards, and then maybe Bigfoot gets to reveal a log, and then wow, it's a log over a blank too, which hurts. It hurts. Um, so yeah, I mean, it still wastes one of your opponent's cards, being a discard. That's like pretty good. Um, and if you have enough health, sure, go for it. Or if you're like not scared of the highest value attack, maybe if you're playing Little Red, you can just play this, mess up her symbols, and then there's like an extra like place for this because hey, she might hit a big card, maybe eyes, but then it might be the wrong symbol, so it doesn't ignore it, and yeah. Um, there are cases where you play this a lot. There are cases where you don't play this at all. Um, yeah. Next up, putting the cards on the bottom of your deck um, can matter in some cases. Maybe if you let's see, you defended with this against Huntsman from Little Red, and you revealed maybe what large chance you have, um, which might be important because that is like a card that also has infinite value potential. If you don't have Feigns anymore, Red could just attack you every turn with it, and well, that's it. Um, In that case, it will get put on bottom, so you know the card will be stuck there for the rest of the game. Except like if the opponent has some ways to shuffle the deck, which they usually don't, like most decks don't have that. But you yourself have it. Remember, with wins, you shuffle your deck and all other players' decks as well. So if you put like a important card on bottom with this, maybe a Beast from Dracula, if one of the Sis came to attack and it got revealed, you might want to keep it there and don't play your wins anymore. So there is a bit of risk just to play this and then play wins, but I guess it's still often worth it. About recurring this, well, it's a really risky card. If your opponent has like no big punishes anymore, go for it, sure. If you really need this card, maybe if you're playing Tomoe and she still has one of her sevens, and this is your only way to block the seven, discard it immediately for some reason because you didn't recur cloaks for some reason. Um, it might be worth to recur it. You see how vague I am because this is just it's not a card that I personally enjoy, because I don't like randomness. Black Panther is my most hated character, in Unmatched, just because of the pure luck factor, and this card acts basically the same, where you discard a card that you don't know of which it is, and you get attacked by a card, and you again don't have any control. Um, it's just pure luck. In some cases, yeah, it's useful, but I wouldn't recur it often. And then we get to the schemes. Hey, now it's now it's peak unmatched. Let me tell you that. Um, we have the Eye of Agamotto. It's the Doctor Strange only scheme with a boost rate of 2, and you have 2 copies. It says shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 5 cards, gain 1 action. Alright, lads, let's hold up, I know what you're thinking. This is Budapest from Widow's deck on crack because you draw 5 and also gain an action. Well, it would be so cool. It would be so cool. But yeah, indeed, drawing 5 can be really, really good to fill up your hand. Maybe you didn't use your ability and got aggro down. Maybe Raptors or Bruce got a good combo turn onto you, and you're on 1 card. Um, yeah, this can help you because you shuffle the 1 card you had in hand back into deck, so that card is gone. You might not see it again for a bit, but well, you shuffle and then draw 5, so there is a good option. And then well, you have 5 cards in deck in hand, I mean, and then still 2 actions, so you might be able to double attack out of nowhere. That would be the fun case to use this card, but of course, Strange is not fun. Um, because this is sadly not how it is used. How it is used is as a super pass. And let me explain that. If you start your turn at 7 cards in hand, you maneuver first action, go up to 8. You play this, so you shuffle the other 7 cards from your hand back into your deck. You still have 1 action, you draw 5, and then you maneuver again a second time, draw up to 6, and then bam, your whole turn is spent. At the start, you have had 7 cards in hand. At the end, you have 6 cards in hand and one additional one in deck, which is so stupid. You spend your whole turn and get 1 card extra. Holy, that's like a triple pass because you spend your whole turn, which is like 2 passes, and then you also get one additional card, third one. Woohoo! It's stupid. Um, I mean, there are cases where you use this to actually shuffle and draw 5 cards. Maybe you don't like your hand at that point. Maybe you need a specific cards, a cloak. The shuffling is pretty cool because, well, again, it puts card that you put on the bottom of the deck maybe a bit higher, so you're more likely to draw into them. Um, so in that case, it can help. Maybe you're at 2 health and Bigfoot's lock would maybe kill you because you don't have any good blocks in hand. You might play this just to have the possibility of drawing a cloak because it's kind of like a mulligan in competitive, where you just draw 5 completely new cards. Um, but yeah, this is a super pass on fatigue while helping you to get the good cards that you put on bottom, which is just like insane. This is one of the two reasons why Strange plays so degenerate because I mean I see the intent in this card with all the blind boosting before. Um, yeah, you blind boost a lot, therefore you can also recur a lot, and then you draw 5 again and keep up hand count and digress. But yeah, that's not how he plays. Um, it is pretty sad. It is a missed opportunity. Well, yeah, I think just this card alone wouldn't make Strange this broken. You would still be pretty strong with rings, being able to recur that and this as a super pass. But the next one I think is what cements him as like probably the best fatigue fighter in the whole game, even better than the Winter Soldier, even though he can guarantee go infinite. Um, it is no really I'm a doctor. It's another Strange only scheme. With a boost value of 3 this time you have 2 copies. It says reveal a card from your hand and put it on top of your deck. Doctor Strange or a friendly fighter adjacent to him recovers health equal to that card's boost value. It gets even stupider. Revealing a card from your hand might sound not good because hey, your opponent gets information on what you have in your hand. Oh no, but it usually doesn't matter at all because you usually have like 4 or 5 other cards in your hand still, so they know one of them. And what does that bring it to them? Yeah, okay, maybe they know you have your last bolts in hand. Okay, cool. What do they do with this information now? They always think about, oh fuck, he has it in hand. Um, yeah, it isn't that big of a punish. Um, Putting it back onto your deck, however, is insane. You add cards to your deck. Uh, just like with Aya Agamotto, you can use this first action, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. Then second action, you maneuver, you draw the card that you just put on top. So you spend your whole turn and your deck size stays the same. And you heal. Because, hey, you can heal up to 3 health. Because, like, your highest boost value is 3. So, you have 2 of these, which leads to a guaranteed 6 healing, which already gets your health total up to 20. And then, since this is also kind of like a double pass in fatigue, because you spent your whole turn with this, 1 card, um, yeah, you have 10, 10, 10 passes with 20 health guaranteed. Maybe more if you hit some rings. What the hell did they think when they designed this character? I mean, in some niche cases, you could also set up blind boosts for maybe suns or bolts. Um, but to be honest, you don't blind boost. Like, there are cases where you put a bolts on top and then attack second action with another bolts and, yeah, blind boost it to get a 5. But, yeah, you don't do that. It's so sad. I would love if he does that. Um, this just, yeah, Strange is stupid. These schemes are stupid. It's insane value. And yeah, I don't know what to say about this anymore. I'm just, yeah, it's strange. It's strange. Let's get to the conclusion because I want to get this done. Ooh, I suffered for this. I suffered. Um, Doctor Strange is probably one of the strongest fighters in Unmatched that was ever released. He has an insane value game with his ability because he can technically recur infinitely if you just attack with rings every time. You probably heal 1 and then recur it for 1 damage again. Then you also have 10 passes, so you don't just have like a 36, 37 card deck. No, you also have 10 passes, getting to like a 46 card deck if we're talking fatigue. Um, Then on top of that, 50% of the released characters never deal damage to you just because of cloak. If you play your cards right, which is again stupid. So yeah, he just waits until you die in the most boring fashion. He runs away the whole game, um, never really goes into attack himself, um, and just passes until like oblivion, and yeah, you overdraw fatigue and die. Um, I would want to say that his strength depends on how well you manage his ability, as with maybe some other characters that have optional abilities, but sadly, it doesn't really matter that often because his kit is just so strong. It doesn't really matter if you maybe recur mists one time too much, or if you don't recur bolts at all. It usually doesn't even matter. That's how stupid this character is. Um, I mean, yeah, if you recur every single time, you might get it into a bit of a problem with your health, but if you just have like a bit of understanding what your opponent has, what they don't have, yeah, you probably won't get to a point where it's so scary for you. Um, and yeah, strange is stupid. I don't know how often I said that. Let me say it one more time. Strange is stupid. Um, I'll just put you the recursion tier list again here, based on the points. Of course, the cards that you can't recur are your schemes because you can't play it in combat and the one card. Um, then the only if you need the draw tier, which is Master of Camouflage, probably not, or like once per game at most, is winds and mists. Then good options, depending on the game state, what your plan is, might be feint and bolt. Then great ones, which you like usually want to recur, being Seven Suns, which is like your best value block. And then the things that you basically almost always recur are cloak and rings. But yeah, as always, it depends on the matchup, game state, personal preference. Maybe if you're a masochist, you might just recur Master Kamatage only the whole game and still win because it's strange. But yeah, then we get to the card tier list, and again, it depends on matchup game state. As always, I don't think Strange has D tier cards. I think none of his cards are that bad. The only C tier one I would say is Steadfast Disciple. I mean, it's a 2 value block for one. If you can block him with it, yeah, do it. Or maybe if you hit it for a blind boost, it's useful, I guess, but it's not great. The B tier ones, Master of Camouflage, 4 blocks early game are pretty nice, but soon it will become a blank too. But since you don't really want to recur it, yeah, you probably get 2 of them used pretty well, and then the third one is meh. But hey, you got 2 4 blocks out of it, so pretty good. And then Mists, it's just it's just such a risky card. On paper, the discarding is an S tier effect, but just the random reveal stuff, and you might get punished so hard. I can't put it higher than B tier, even though in some matchups it will be your best defense, next to Cloak in S tier, but yeah, overall I put it in B. Then A, we have Winds. Well, 4 value attacks are pretty good. Then Bolts, blind boosting can be important, action gain also, or the 3 boosts to recur just maybe for really I'm a doctor. Then Seven Suns being your highest value block. Feint in this deck probably a bit higher than others, but just because you have the option to recur it, and Feint is just a decent block overall. Um, and then yeah, S tier cards, of course, your 2 schemes. They are like what defines your playstyle, what makes Strange so overpowered. I may argue it's exactly the 4 S tier cards in that combination. I think if 1 or 2 of them would be missing or maybe were a bit different from the wording, Strange wouldn't be this incredibly stupid, but yeah. And then yeah, Cloak and Rings, of course, blanking a card so you don't take damage is dumb. Healing for 4 is dumb, and yeah. Then matchups. Well, as you see, this is not a pretty like balanced matchup spread. You have half of the roster in free win, which is sad, which is really sad. But let's start with the don't try it. I only have one character in don't try it, be it T-Rex. T-Rex just has too many high value attacks and so much draw, she pressures you down. I mean, there are cases where you still win it, just because you get a good combo turn with bolts, or maybe then she doesn't defend and you heal 4/4 with rings, but even in that case, Rex doesn't care, Rex deals you so much damage that you actually die. Then the slightly bad ones, Tesla, as a ranged character that can still swing for sevens, it's pretty important. Moon Knight and Luke, they just hit too big too often. Luke also has the option to attack with like commanding, still standing from range with Misty, so that's really annoying for you. Um, and Moon Knight, well, it's Khonshu. Khonshu smacks like a bitch, uh, and yeah, it's also not as great for you. But I mean, if you get the right draw with cloaks, you still win it. Um, and the even ones, Sherlock, it already says stuff if the character is even with Sherlock. Those are like the value beasts, Sherlock, Yen, Widow, Bat. Those are characters that like have the same amount of value game. Um, and then strange favorite, Electra, I would say is strange favorite just because you can heal off the hand every time, and technically you have the same deck size as her just because of your 10 passes. Um, Red can maybe do a bit at some point, maybe with her effects if she gets lucky. Same with Shulk with Lady Justice or Bigfoot if Strange doesn't draw the right defenses. But in that case, we're already like getting into funky territory where it's just luck if he draws the card, because yes, if yes, well, he wins. If not, you have a chance. And then yeah, everyone else almost free win in my opinion. There are some that might not deserve to be there. Genie is one that I thought about. Um, he definitely has a shot in it, but he has to have like really good draw, perfect wishes turn, and Strange can play around that. But I think he still has a shot. Wukong might also like have a good chance, just because he has such a good value game as well. If Strange has to discard cards for boosting, that might be good. But again, Cloak shuts down Ox, and yeah. Anyways, that's it about the matchups. Maps, to be honest, Strange doesn't really care about maps just because he's that good. However, he still is a ranged character, so any anti-ranged map will not be as great for him. Plus, he wants to fatigue, so usually his motto is the bigger the better. So top three maps: one, Yukon, opponent never gets to attack you. Great, you can just scheme and win. Then Sherwood, again, you have a pretty large map that is good for ranged. And then Memorial again. There are some cases where you maybe actually want to go on something like McMinnville, which is also pretty large, but really bad for range, just to force other ranged characters into adjacency, to get good value out of Cloak, or just to punish them more than yourself. But yeah, I would say these three are your usual suspects to pick. And yeah, thank you for watching. Feel free to write feedbacks or questions in the comments as always. And please tell me which character you want me to cover next. Yes, I've seen the Panther request again. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll suffer. Um, and then planned for next are Shakespeare, of course, and then I wanted to take a look at Ingen. And after that, we'll see what I actually, if I have time to test like many matchups, I might get to Black Panther. If I don't, I might just take a character again that I know a bit of already. And yeah. Well, thanks for watching, and until next time.